Welcome back to Global Monetary Watch. Today is July 26, and we're taking a careful look at one of the most talked about topics in the Iraqi Dinar community. A figure that has captured widespread attention is the idea of a 2.11 Iraqi Dinar exchange rate, a claim that has sparked excitement, skepticism, and endless debate across social media and investment forums. Rather than accepting or rejecting this claim without examination, today's discussion focuses on understanding what is supported by official information, what remains speculation, and why separating those two categories is essential when evaluating developments related to Iraq's currency and financial reforms. Over the years, the Iraqi dinar has attracted significant interest from people around the world who closely monitor Iraq's economy and banking system. Every new headline, government announcement, or banking reform often leads to renewed discussions about the currency's future. While some reports focus on dramatic exchange rate predictions, others emphasize the gradual institutional changes taking place inside Iraq. Understanding the difference between verified developments and community interpretations helps create a more balanced perspective. Reliable analysis begins with documented facts rather than assumptions, allowing viewers to better understand how monetary reforms typically unfold in real-world financial systems. Before examining the current claims, it's important to establish the factual background surrounding Iraq's monetary policy. The Iraqi dinar is managed by the Central Bank of Iraq, which is responsible for maintaining financial stability, regulating monetary policy, and overseeing the country's banking system. Like any central bank, its decisions are influenced by several factors, including foreign currency reserves, oil revenue, government fiscal policy, inflation, and cooperation with international financial institutions. Iraq's official exchange rate has remained around its current level since the adjustment made during the economic challenges created by declining oil prices and the global pandemic several years ago. The discussion surrounding a possible 2.11 exchange rate represents a very different category from officially confirmed monetary policy. At present, there has been no formal announcement from the Central Bank of Iraq, the International Monetary Fund, or other recognized international financial organizations confirming such a valuation. That distinction matters because financial markets operate on documented policy decisions rather than rumors circulating online. While speculation naturally develops whenever banking reforms accelerate, responsible analysis requires distinguishing between verified institutional actions and expectations shared within investor communities. This approach creates a clearer understanding of where the available evidence actually points. Looking at the mathematics behind such a valuation also helps explain why this topic generates so much attention. A move from the current official exchange rate to more than $2 per dinar would represent one of the largest currency adjustments ever discussed in modern monetary history. Events of that magnitude are extremely uncommon and would require extraordinary economic, financial, and institutional conditions. Historical examples from other countries show that major currency reforms often involve redenomination, gradual appreciation, or broader structural reforms rather than an immediate overnight increase in value. These historical comparisons provide useful context when evaluating claims about Iraq's currency. This brings us to an important distinction that is often overlooked during online discussions. Some people describe a scenario involving an immediate, large-scale revaluation that instantly changes the purchasing power of existing banknotes. Others focus on a much different possibility, a gradual strengthening of Iraq's currency over time as economic conditions improve and financial reforms continue. These are two separate concepts with different mechanisms and different implications. Understanding which scenario is being discussed helps prevent confusion and allows viewers to interpret banking news within the proper economic framework, rather than assuming every reform points toward the same outcome. When examining Iraq's recent financial developments, the central bank's ongoing reforms deserve particular attention because they are supported by publicly documented actions. In recent years, Iraq has worked to strengthen its banking regulations, improve compliance with international financial standards, expand electronic payment systems, and enhance oversight of financial transactions. These efforts have been widely connected to improving transparency, reducing financial risks, and strengthening confidence in Iraq's banking sector. While these reforms do not automatically indicate a specific future exchange rate, they represent measurable institutional progress that analysts closely monitor when assessing Iraq's long-term monetary development. One of the major challenges Iraq faced involved international concerns surrounding anti-money laundering controls and compliance within parts of its banking system. These issues resulted in tighter oversight affecting access to U.S. dollar transactions for several Iraqi financial institutions. In response, the central bank introduced a series of reforms designed to improve reporting standards, strengthen regulatory procedures, and increase cooperation with international financial authorities. Since then, observers have noted gradual improvements in banking operations and regulatory compliance. Although these reforms are still ongoing, they represent significant structural changes that contribute to a stronger financial framework without necessarily any immediate exchange rate adjustment. The reforms introduced by the central bank have also influenced the difference between Iraq's official exchange rate and the rate available in the parallel market. In previous years, this gap widened significantly, creating challenges for businesses and individuals who relied on access to foreign currency. More recently, however, efforts to improve compliance and regulate currency transactions have contributed to a gradual narrowing of that spread. While the process is not yet complete, many analysts view this trend as an indicator that the banking reforms are beginning to produce measurable results. A smaller gap between official and market rates is generally considered an important sign of a more stable monetary environment. Another subject attracting attention involves exchange limits and restrictions within Iraq's banking system. These policies are often misunderstood because similar measures can serve very different purposes, depending on a country's economic circumstances. In some cases, governments introduce exchange limits when foreign currency reserves are under severe pressure and authority to conserve available resources. In other situations, limits are implemented as part of broader financial reforms designed to improve transparency, strengthen regulatory oversight, and move currency transactions through officially monitored banking channels. Understanding which situation applies requires examining the broader economic context, rather than focusing on the restrictions alone. When Iraq's recent banking policies are viewed alongside other available economic indicators, many observers conclude that the reforms appear more closely connected to modernization than to emergency intervention. Iraq continues to maintain substantial foreign exchange reserves supported largely by oil exports, and the country remains actively engaged with international financial organizations. These factors suggest a financial system focused on strengthening institutional credibility and improving compliance standards rather than responding to an immediate shortage of foreign currency. While challenges remain, the overall direction of these reforms reflects an effort to create a more transparent and internationally compatible banking environment. International cooperation has become another important part of Iraq's financial development. Organizations such as the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank continue to work with Iraqi authorities on technical assistance, policy recommendations, and financial modernization initiatives. These partnerships do not determine Iraq's exchange rate, but they often encourage reforms that improve governance, financial reporting, banking supervision, and institutional stability. Such cooperation is common among countries working to strengthen their financial systems and attract greater international confidence. These ongoing relationships provide additional context when evaluating the broader trajectory of Iraq's monetary and banking reforms. Economic fundamentals also deserve close attention because they provide the foundation for any country's monetary policy. Iraq possesses one of the world's largest proven oil reserves, and petroleum exports remain the primary source of government revenue. As global energy markets recover and production capacity expands, oil income continues to play a central role in supporting government spending and building foreign currency reserves. These revenues contribute to Iraq's fiscal strength, although they are naturally influenced by fluctuations in global oil prices. A stable and diversified economy generally provides stronger long-term support for any national currency than speculation or short-term market expectations. Major international energy companies have maintained long-term investments in Iraq's oil sector despite periods of political and economic uncertainty. These projects often span decades rather than years, reflecting confidence in Iraq's natural resource potential and future production capacity. While investment in the energy sector does not directly determine exchange rate policy, it contributes to economic development, employment opportunities, government revenue, and infrastructure growth. Long-term investment commitments also indicate that international businesses continue to see strategic value in Iraq's economy despite the challenges that remain in certain sectors. The Iraqi government has also pursued broader economic reforms aimed at improving financial inclusion, expanding digital payment systems, and encouraging greater participation in the formal economy. These initiatives seek to reduce reliance on cash transactions while strengthening oversight of financial activity throughout the country. Additional efforts have focused on increasing non-oil revenue sources, improving public financial management, and supporting private sector development. Although progress varies across different reform areas, these initiatives demonstrate an ongoing effort to modernize Iraq's economy and reduce dependence on a single source of national income over the long term. Even with these positive developments, it is important to recognize that stronger economic fundamentals alone do not automatically produce a higher currency value. Exchange rates are influenced by a combination of monetary policy, investor confidence, political stability, inflation control, foreign reserves, and international financial relationships. A country may possess abundant natural resources while maintaining a relatively weak currency if broader institutional conditions do not support sustained monetary stability. For this reason, analysts typically evaluate Iraq's banking reforms, fiscal performance, and international cooperation together rather than relying on any single economic indicator when assessing the country's financial progress. The broader global financial environment also plays an important role in understanding Iraq's monetary outlook. Around the world, central banks continue to adapt to changing economic conditions, geopolitical developments, and evolving payment systems. While the U.S. dollar remains the dominant international reserve currency, many countries have explored additional methods of trade settlement and reserve diversification. Iraq operates within this global financial framework while maintaining close ties to the international banking system. As a result, decisions made by Iraqi financial authorities are influenced not only by domestic priorities, but also by international compliance standards, reserve management practices, and cooperation with global financial institutions. One of the most significant relationships in Iraq's financial system involves its interaction with U.S. financial authorities and international banking infrastructure. Iraq's foreign currency reserves and access to dollar settlement mechanisms require compliance with internationally recognized banking standards. This explains why recent reforms have focused heavily on strengthening anti-money laundering controls, improving transaction monitoring, and enhancing transparency within the banking sector. These measures are designed to ensure continued participation in the global financial system. Although these reforms do not confirm any future exchange rate target, they represent practical steps toward improving the credibility and efficiency of Iraq's monetary framework. Political stability also remains an important factor when evaluating Iraq's long-term financial progress. Governments can introduce ambitious reform programs, but successful implementation depends on sustained institutional cooperation and policy consistency over time. Iraq continues to balance domestic priorities with regional relationships and international partnerships while pursuing economic modernization. Although political challenges have not disappeared, many recent initiatives demonstrate an ongoing commitment to improving governance, strengthening financial institutions, and expanding economic opportunities. These efforts contribute to a more stable environment that supports long-term development, even though uncertainties naturally remain within any evolving economy. After reviewing the available evidence, it becomes clear that the discussion surrounding a 2.11 Iraqi dinar exchange rate should be viewed carefully. At this time, there is no publicly documented confirmation from the Central Bank of Iraq, the International Monetary Fund, or other recognized international organizations supporting that specific figure. Most references to this number originate from discussions within the broader dinar community, rather than official monetary policy announcements. Distinguishing between documented information and community speculation allows viewers to evaluate developments using reliable sources instead of relying solely on circulating online claims. At the same time, documented evidence does support the existence of meaningful institutional reforms within Iraq's financial system. Banking modernization, improved regulatory compliance, stronger cooperation with international financial organizations, expanded electronic payment infrastructure, and continued efforts to narrow the gap between official and market exchange rates all represent measurable developments. These changes reflect a financial sector working toward greater stability and transparency. While none of these reforms guarantee a particular exchange rate or timeline, they provide concrete examples of structural progress that analysts continue to monitor as Iraq advances its long-term economic objectives. When examining possible future scenarios, it is helpful to focus on realistic possibilities supported by available evidence rather than concentrating on specific numerical predictions. One potential outcome is the continuation of gradual institutional improvements accompanied by increasing confidence in Iraq's banking sector. Another possibility involves slower progress if economic or political conditions become more challenging. Factors such as oil market performance, regional stability, government policy, and international cooperation will all continue to influence Iraq's monetary environment. Because these variables evolve over time, any responsible analysis must acknowledge both opportunities and risks without presenting unsupported conclusions. The key lesson from today's discussion is that Iraq's monetary story is far more complex than a single exchange rate headline. The country's financial future depends on a combination of economic fundamentals, regulatory reforms, institutional credibility, reserve management, and sustained cooperation with international financial partners. Focusing only on dramatic claims can sometimes distract from the verified developments that are taking place behind the scenes. By following documented information and understanding the broader context, viewers can develop a more informed perspective on Iraq's ongoing financial transformation without relying on speculation. As always, our goal here on Global Monetary Watch is to examine official developments, explain complex financial topics in a clear and balanced way, and separate confirmed information from unverified claims. Staying informed requires patience, careful analysis, and a willingness to evaluate evidence as new information becomes available. Financial reforms are rarely simple or immediate, and they often unfold through a series of institutional improvements, rather than a single headline-making event. Understanding that process provides a stronger foundation for following Iraq's economic journey in the months and years ahead. Thank you for spending your time with Global Monetary Watch on this July 26 update. If you found today's analysis informative, consider sharing your thoughts in the comments about which banking reform or economic development you believe deserves closer attention in future videos. Your questions and feedback help shape the topics we explore next. Until our next update, continue following verified information, stay informed about official developments, and approach every major headline with careful analysis. Subscribe to Global Monetary Watch and press the bell icon so you never miss our latest updates.